Hi, I'm Duncan with Be A Lighthouse Ministries. Welcome to another episode of This Little Light of Mine. We like to encourage people to let their light shine just right where they're at. I'm here today with Dan Hardy from Northwest Indian Bible School, and I'm really excited to hear about what he has to say and learn a little bit more about their ministry and the school. Well, hi, Dan. How are you doing today?
Good. Duncan, good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while. Dan, could you tell me a little bit about the school? Just tell me who you are ministering to. I'm real curious about who it is you're ministering to and, quite frankly, why them?
Sure. So, Northwest Indian Bible School is located in Alberton, Montana. That's the west side of Montana. And we have about 356 acres nestled in the Rocky Mountains there. So it's a beautiful campus. And we minister to Native American people. So in order to come to our school here, you have to have at least 1/8 registered Native American in you. And we have students that have come to us from Alaska, as far south as New Mexico, as far east as New York, and the Senecas and the Iroquois back there. We begin accepting students in 7th grade and go through 12th grade. And then we also have a 2-year discipleship program that uses the Shepherd's Global Classroom as our core curriculum for that. So we've been here for 55 years. We were kind of a branch that happened from Brainerd Indian School in South Dakota years ago. And when Allegheny became a connection, Allegheny Wesleyan Methodist Connection became a connection, the school was started then. And so we're here to serve and to help young people come to a relationship with Jesus Christ through the platform of education.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I learned something already, so that's great. One of the things that I usually like to ask people in the video is the people that you're ministering to unreached with the gospel? But it sounds like to me that you're not just there on one particular reservation, that the people or the kids that are coming to you are probably familiar, or they're already in church, or they've already been reached with the gospel, otherwise they wouldn't be coming?
Sure, great question. A lot of them actually have a connection to a church, but probably don't attend very much. Okay. The most they might have attended would have been Sunday schools or some junior church services. But even that would have been scarce. A lot of our students come. We find them from Native American youth camps, or from missionaries that are on the field in different places, Native American fields across the United States. So a lot of them have some background of religious background, but most of them don't have much of anything.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. One of the things that I find interesting is I'm living back east now. I'm in Indiana, and we hear a lot about inner city ministry. We hear a lot about overseas ministry in particular, but we hear very little about ministry to the Native Americans. And I've always been interested in that. We go to Mexico some and do ministry there, and I find there's some similarities. And so I guess my question is, are there a lot of ministries ministering to the Native Americans, or are there just a few?
There isn't a lot. Actually, Northwest Indian Bible School is the only Christian boarding school in the world for Native Americans.
Wow.
And there are some small schools, day schools, that are on the reservations. But we are the only Christian boarding school left that has kids come off the reservation to our school and works with them and gives them the Christian perspective, not just the holiness perspective. I'm saying even Christian, any Christian organization, we're the only school left that's doing this. So,
I was going to say that's great, but I guess that's not really great. It would be nice if there were hundreds of schools doing it, I suppose, but that's
Right.
extremely interesting information. What are your biggest challenges?
So most of the young people that we work with come from a dysfunctional background, if I could put it that way.
Okay.
A lot of come from single parent families. Some come from no parents but are raised by their grandma. Probably over 90% of our students have already been involved in drugs and alcohol by the time they come to us at 12 years old. Probably that many have been sexually abused as well by the time they're 12 years old, boys and girls.
Right.
And so they come with a lot of baggage. There's a lot of trauma, a lot of things that they have to overcome to even present the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's other things we have to overcome even before we can even present Jesus to them. Of course, we are a Christian school, so we're presenting Jesus all the time. But before they really understand who God is and what he can really mean to them, there's some things they have to overcome in their life. And there's a lot of counseling that happens, a lot of one-on-one interactions. And so the struggle is to help them see that God is the answer to their problems. They've searched a lot of areas. They've tried the drugs, the alcohol. They've tried living on their own at 12 years old. They've tried so many things, and it keeps failing. And so they say, well, I'll give this school a chance. And we want them to understand that it's not the school. It's God that makes the difference. That's really a big part of the struggle and what we're here to do. So,
okay, are they placed by the court, or do they just their families send them?
No. So each student has to sign a paper that says they want to be here.
Okay.
They have to desire to be here. We let them know we're not a jail. You don't have to stay here if you don't want to. We want them to want to be here. Mm-hmm. But usually they're referred to us either by local church ministries, by parents who used to attend, or grandparents who used to attend. So we get a lot of the students through referral basis. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm going to mention something, and there's a reason I'm mentioning it, because I want to know the question that I'm going to ask is, what have you found that works really well? The reason I'm asking here at Be A Lighthouse Ministries, our main ministry is ministering to youth that are incarcerated, whether it's in juvenile centers or wherever. We also do some work with prison ministry, but our main focus is on kids that have been through a lot of the things that you just mentioned. And it seems really difficult to really see them have that life transforming experience with God. And it doesn't happen on our end, quite frankly, as often as we would like. So again, I ask, what have you found that works really well? Because maybe I can use that.
So one of the things, and the reason why we are a boarding school, is because we get to be with them 24/7.
Yeah.
So they get to see us when we're feeling good. They get to see us when we're upset. They get to see us in our high times, our low times. They get to see all of that, and they get to see how we react. And they're finding out that what real love is. And I think that's just the biggest thing is when we can show them that we really love them, and they understand that. I remember an instance when one young man came to me, 20 years old, was in our Bible school discipleship program, and said, he said, I know you love me. He said, but I've never felt love like this before, and it scares me.
Yeah.
And that it startled me when he said that, because I've never been afraid of love. I welcome when people want to love me. I welcome that. And he said, it scares me. He said, I build a wall. He said, because I'm scared of what this is a new feeling to me, and I don't know how to react to it. he said, I put a wall up. I said, I just told the young man, I said, I called him by name, and I said, well, I want you to know whenever you put that wall up, anytime you want to look on the other side of the wall, I said, I'll still be there waiting for you. And
wow.
just to have them know we love them. We still love them. And when they lash out in anger or when a trigger happens in their life and they're lashing out, that we still respond and love back to them. That really just tames them down. It helps them understand there's something different here than what I've been used to. And that allows us to just share why we still love them in those instances. It's because of what God has done in their own heart, and we can share that with them.
Wow. Yeah, that really just stands out to me. I remember Dr. Scott Larson, which is one of the leading guys in juvenile justice, and they also had a group home for a while. And he described to me a scenario of, he said it almost always happens, of there's two ladders. And when a kid is up on the ladder, say on the left, and the rungs are hatred, abuse, mistrust, people lying to them, just all of those things, everything opposite of love. When they start coming down off of that ladder and they want to get over, and they got one foot, one hand on the other ladder that represents love and trust and honesty and all of that. He said, right about the time they're straddling both ladders, you'll always see them kind of sabotage that relationship because they want to see, they're testing it to see if it's going to work.
Yes.
And
yes.
If we don't be careful, and if we aren't careful and we react inappropriately or we get upset or whatever, they say, well, I knew all of that was too good to be true. And they run right back up the old ladder. Do you see that? I mean, have you had instances of that where it seems they sabotage that relationship right before they make the big leap?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I could give you instance after instance of time when we think we're finally getting somewhere, and all of a sudden they'll just explode on us, and we don't know where it comes from, but they've found we're still there. You know, the next day you're going back and say, hey, why don't we go do this together? They're not used to that. They're not used to us coming back and still showing love. They're so used to being put down, shamed for what they do. But when we're here encouraging them, giving them positive reinforcement, and all of that included, we try to do the positive reinforcement thing instead of the negative punishment. It's more of the positive reinforcement to the good.
Good.
We do have our rules that obviously if you break them, you'll get your little punishment that goes along with it. But we've really focused more on rewarding good rather than punishing the bad. I can give you an incident that just happened this week. One young lady would just not listen at all. She wasn't going to do anything we said. So I told the dorm dean, why don't you take all the rest of the girls, and they've been really good, take them into McDonald's and get them a smoothie or ice cream. And so I went to the young lady that was giving us problems, and I said, are you willing to listen to this particular staff? And they said, nope, don't want anything to do with them. Just tell her to leave. So I looked at the van load of girls and the lady that was in the van. I said, she said, you guys can just go ahead and go to McDonald's. And when she heard that, she's like, oh, I want to go to McDonald's. I said, no, you told them to go on and go ahead. And, it was just a couple of days later, she came back and apologized. So we didn't punish her. We rewarded the others. Yeah. And it was an overall good experience for everybody, and worked well.
Good. Sometimes they're just our consequences to bad decisions, aren't there? Since we're talking about stories, I keep hitting my microphone. I hope it's not coming through too noisy. Talking about stories, do you have a story or two that you can tell us that kind of gives an example of the impact that the school is making in some of the lives of the youth?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Probably the one that grips my heart the most, and I love telling about it. It happened 3 years ago. Some girls had finished, some 14-year-old girls had finished their work for the day and had asked permission from their teacher to come sit in my office. You can see behind me is our executive council, where our executive council meets, and they like to come and sit in those nice chairs around the table. And I was working on my computer, and they were sitting there at the table, and the door was open. And so the conversation was just, they were kind of talking among themselves, and I was listening. And they were talking about how they didn't really have any parents or anybody that really cared about them. And they were telling about some things that were happening in their lives, about a little brother that had been thrown across the room by a drunken dad. And while they were huddled in the corner, just scared to even talk because they were afraid that the dad would beat them. Stories about how a mother called them on the phone and said, I don't even want to hear your voice anymore. Don't call me and don't write letters back to me. I don't want anything to do with you. This young lady's 14 years old here at our school, and her mother's telling her she's done, doesn't want to hear about her. And so I kind of turned around in my chair and I said, you know what, girls? I said, but this is what NIBS, Northwest Indiana Bible School, NIBS is short for Northwest Indiana Bible School. I said, this is what NIBS is all about. I said, we're a family here. And I said, you got your family there in the dorm and your sisters and your dorm parent. They said, yeah, it's nice. We have our sisters and our dorm mom, but we don't really have a dad. And I said, well, you know what, girls? I said, if you want, I said, I'd be glad to be your dad. And they got quiet. And sorry. They looked up at me and they said, you mean we can call you daddy? And I said, yeah, if you want to call me daddy, absolutely. They said, oh, cool. That was Wednesday morning. Wednesday night, went to church, and the girls were already there, and my wife and I were walking up to the church, and they come running over to my wife. They said, hey, guess what? They said, you're our mom now because Dan's our dad.
Oh my.
And to this day, that's what those three girls, they call me dad. I'm dad to them. And
wow.
I mean, that's the transformation that's taken place. Some of the girls told me that when it's time for them to get married, I'm going to be the one walking them down the aisle, because I've stepped into that place. And then to watch as they've learned how a dad treats his daughter properly,
mm-hmm.
and then to recognize that God is their heavenly Father, and to begin to understand that relationship. That's what we're about.
I think we're both going to have tears in our eyes by the time we get done here. That is
yeah,
touching.
I can't talk about that without doing that.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. And it just brings to my mind how much God is using you there, which kind of leads us into the next area of questions that I have. And anytime you want to jump in and just add something, just go ahead, because I know I'm just firing questions at you left and right, but I'm just really curious. I've been really looking forward to this and couldn't hardly sleep last night because I was nervous about this particular interview, because I want people to really understand what it is that you do. Has this ministry, and we're going to get into the calling and how you ended up there, has it been harder or has it been easier than you thought? Yeah, I guess that's the question.
Wow. Yeah. What a great question. Because I knew the difficulties, just from being, my dad was the president here years ago. And so I was a student. So I knew some of the difficulties. I didn't know to the extent that I sense now that I'm actually on the field. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would say it's more difficult than I realized even. Anytime you're taking ground from the enemy, from Satan, he fights. And the Native American culture is one of the few cultures that has not had a widespread revival. That there's a strong spiritual warfare that happens, and definitely more than I felt when I was pastoring a church. Not that the devil doesn't fight churches, not that, but I definitely felt just a stronger battle and the need to stay in the place of prayer in my own life to make sure that that the ministry is being properly, that we're properly meeting the needs that we need to in this ministry. Yeah, native religion revolves around a lot of nature. And a lot of their ideas of the spirit world come from nature, the sun dances, rain dance, the eagle feather is very important. Buffalo is very important.
Do the young people, when they come to Christ or when they start moving towards God, does that start falling off, or do they continue to try to do a blend of the two?
Yeah, that I think they recognize that those things aren't really what God is the creator. When they understand that God is the creator of those things tend to fall off pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So let's jump into.
I guess
go ahead.
Jump in.
Yeah.
Let me jump in on that too, though. The way that the culture is woven so tightly with the religion does create some difficulties when you try to separate what is cultural and what is spiritual. Because so much of their culture is woven into their spirituality. And so it makes it difficult, because I'm a believer that we need to preserve as much of culture as we can among the natives.
Right.
But so much of their culture is interwoven with their spirituality, but we learn from them. They know the differences. When they begin to seek God, God shows them, and it's interesting what they'll come back and tell us. We feel like we shouldn't do this. We're not the ones telling them they shouldn't do this. They come and tell us, we feel like we shouldn't do this anymore. And God is able to show them, and we try to learn from them and what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed on our school premises. Because we want cultural things. I can give you, for instance, the star quilt that's behind me. In some cases, the star quilt is used in ceremonies, spiritual ceremonies. But in other cases, the star quilt is used as a sign of respect, and you honor someone by wrapping that star quilt around them, showing them that we appreciate you and what you've done. And so we try to separate those things, and not just throw the star quilt out altogether because it was used maybe for a ceremony at one point, but try to preserve the good part of it. And so part of our graduation ceremony that we do here at Northwest Indian Bible Schools is each of our seniors get a star quilt. And right before they march out at the end of the service, they have their favorite teacher wrap the star quilt around them, and we say a word of blessing over them before they leave after graduating. So we've tried to bring part of their culture into what we do that way. Yeah.
Yeah. That's neat. Yeah. I could see the importance of not stripping all culture away. I mean, that wouldn't be, that would just be a horrible thing, I would think, actually.
Right.
But, it does seem like sometimes when missionaries go to a foreign field, we expect them all to become Americans, and that shouldn't.
I don't like that
idea.
Yeah.
It shouldn't happen. This is a question that I always am a little bit hesitant to get into this, but I think it's important for the viewers. And I think this actually is a big part of ministry on your ministry partner's part. The one of the questions that I want to ask you, are you guys 100% funded? Do you have all the money that you need?
Right. That's a great question. So Allegheny Wesley Methodist Connection is our main supporter, if you want to put it that way. And we are underneath the missions department of the Allegheny Wesley Methodist Connection. They supply approximately 60% of what we need to actually run the school.
Okay.
And the other 40% comes from outside giving, donors that are interested in the school, local donors in Missoula and Alberton area, other churches outside of Allegheny, other individuals outside of Allegheny. And so, yeah, if we didn't have outside support, we couldn't exist.
Do the students really pay tuition? Sorry, I jumped in there.
No. So there is a tuition cost,
right.
But with each letter or with each receipt that's sent out to the family, there's a letter that states if you can't cover this, here's a paper that you sign, and it'll be covered by supporters.
Wow.
So
Good.
there isn't
Good.
any. Occasionally, we'll have a parent send us some money. Occasionally, a church will back up one of their church kids and send them and pay. But most of the time, it's not the students don't pay. Yeah. If the students had to pay, we wouldn't have students. Why send
Right.
your kid off to a school when they have free education on the reservation?
Right. Right. So what are your biggest needs? Would that be in personnel? Would it be in funding? Do you have any projects that are going on?
Yeah. So currently, personnel we're really short staffed right now. We could use another full-time maintenance person, another full-time teacher, and a full-time boys dorm dean. We're kind of been sharing that burden together throughout the year, but we really need somebody full-time to give the consistency to the boys dorm. So personnel is a big need right now.
Okay.
And finances.
So,
there's so many projects. This school was built 55 years ago on a dime and a prayer. And so a lot of the structures are old and might not have been totally done correctly the first time around. And so we're having to redo things or fix things. There's always things going on. Right now, currently this week, we've had to dig around the basement of House 10, which is also our chapel, and because the walls are starting to cave in. And so we're having to dig all that out. So there's always projects. And especially when you only have one maintenance man, we're always looking for people that say, hey, I'd come out and give you 2 or 3 weeks. So we encourage other people. Maybe you want to come out in the summer for a month and we have a place to stay and would love to have you come out and join us and be a part of us. Or maybe you want to come out during the school year. That's the best time to come because then you get to interact with the young people as well. But if there's anybody who would be interested in say, hey, I'd love to come out and put my skills to work for a couple weeks. We'd absolutely enjoy having you out here.
So maybe the questions, if somebody's watching this and they think, wow, yeah, maybe I'm feeling touched by these stories and I think maybe God may be putting this on my heart. One of the questions that they may have is, do they raise their own support, or does the school provide their salary, or how does that work?
Right. So if you become full-time staff, the school does supply the salary for them. They're put on a payroll through the school.
Wow. Okay, good.
The volunteers are not a part of payroll, but we like to work with people. Sometimes we'll say you want to fly out here and spend 3 or 4 weeks. Sometimes we can work out a deal where we'll pay for part of the flight or all the flight, and there's benefits. We have great places to stay on campus, fully furnished apartments. They can have meals in the dining hall, so there's not a lot of expenses when it comes to food or where you're staying. So those parts are taken care of. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that we'd make a short video and I could possibly do a little bit of editing but wow, this has all been such great information and so interesting.
Oh, good.
They're just going to need to stick around for the whole thing. So How can we pray for you, Dan? How can we pray for the students? How can we pray for the school?
Sure. First of all, for the students, that God will help them overcome their trauma to the place that they recognize that it wasn't God's fault.
Yes.
But that God wants to heal their trauma. A couple of the girls have painted some pictures with the phrase of how God heals brokenness. Mm-hmm. And they'll paint a picture and then they'll write that little saying on there: God heals the broken heart, or God fixes the broken spirit. And we're just praying that God will be able to get through that brokenness, because many times people that have gone through the trauma these young people have, they create layers of protection. And you got to just peel those layers back one by one, and so that the word of truth can get into their heart. And so that's really been a prayer of ours, that God would just help them understand that he loves them, and he's the one that can make a difference in their life. And then pray that God will not just do that, but then that God will help them become so established that someday they can go back to their own people and be the light to their people.
I love that.
We have Native Americans on staff currently, and we have more coming on next year. And my goal is just to keep seeing that happen. We're praying that God will raise up leaders from these young people that will go back into their own people or be here a part of this school and be a lighthouse, as your ministry says, a lighthouse for Jesus. Yes. And then if you pray for the staff this year, especially with the lack of staff, the burden has been spread out over more and more people. And they're having to do a lot of extra work than what they typically have to do. Mm-hmm. And that God would just give them grace and strength and allow unity to remain among us.
Okay. And one of the last things that I wanted to touch on, where should funds be sent if someone wants to partner with your ministry?
Sure. We have multiple ways to do that. Obviously, you can give directly to the school through just by mailing a check in. Our address here at the school is 32485 Bible Lane, Alberton, Montana 59820. So you can send a check or however you'd like to send cash donations that way. But we do have online giving. You can go to our website, northwestindianbibleschool.org, and give online there. We also have a QR code that you can use and just take a picture of, and it'll take you directly to an online giving place to give to the school.
I want to thank you, Dan. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your heart. And I know there has to be challenges. I know that there's days that you feel the devil fighting, and we all know that he's going to, like you say, if you're breaking new ground, especially, and especially with young people, I think he doesn't want to give them up. So thank you for what you're doing. And I think I could go on just asking a bunch of other questions that I have on a personal level, but we'll just stop right now. And we appreciate your time, and I'm sure that the viewers will be praying. So thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this with us, Duncan. It's a real privilege, and we look forward to seeing how God's going to use this ministry to help other ministries as well. If you're interested in finding out more about us, there's a couple different avenues you can do that through. Obviously, you can go to our website. It's a new website, so there's not a lot up yet. We're still working on that. But that's northwestindianbibleschool.org. Or you can email us at nibs, at blackfoot.net. That's our email address. So if you email us, we'll add you to our email list for our monthly newsletter called the Moccasin Trails. If you're interested in getting the paper version, go ahead and write to us and ask to be put on our mailing list, and we can send you the paper version. Or you can just receive the email version. The other way you can do it is follow us on Facebook, Northwest Indiana Bible School. We have a Facebook page that we kind of do updates a couple times a week just to let people know what we're doing on campus, spotlighting some of the students, spotlighting some of the staff. And so there's a couple different ways to follow us here at the school.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we'll have a link to this video on our website as well at www.bealighthouse.org. And they can find you that way as well if they forget what you just said. So
yeah.
Thanks again, and God bless you guys.
Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, you too.